But it was too late, because when faithful John had told that story, he turned into stone, just like the ravens had said. Oh, the king and the queen were so sad. They cried and they cried and they cried, but there was nothing anyone could do. So the king ordered the stone figure of faithful John to be brought into his bedroom and placed by his bed. And every morning, the king would get out of bed and he would look at the stone figure of faithful John. And he would say, "Oh, faithful John, I was such a bad king. I should have trusted you." Now, some years went by, and the king and the queen had 2 babies, boys. And these babies, over the years, grew into beautiful children. And the queen and the king loved these children so much. One day, the queen was in church, and the king was alone with the 2 children. And the king was once again saying to the stone figure, "Oh, faithful John, I wish there was some way I could bring you back to life." And then a strange thing happened, because the stone figure of faithful John talked. And it said, "Actually, you can bring me back to life, but you must give up what is most important to you in this world." And the king said, "Faithful John, anything. For you, I would give up anything." And the stone figure said, "You must cut off the heads of your 2 children with your own hands and put their blood on me, and then I will come back to life." And the king was horrified, because he did not realize that what was most important to him was his children. But then the king thought about how faithful John had died for him. And the king thought, "I must do whatever I can to bring faithful John back." So the king took out his sword and with his own hand cut off the heads of his children. And the king took their heads and put their blood on the stone figure. And faithful John came back to life. And once faithful John came back to life, faithful John said, "King, you have been faithful to me now." And faithful John said, "Now I will be faithful to you." So faithful John took the heads of the king's children and he put the heads back on their bodies. And on the neck, where their necks had been cut with the sword, faithful John rubbed their necks with his fingers, and the cut disappeared. The necks became whole again, and the children became alive again. And the children didn't even realize they had been dead. They went right back to playing as if nothing had happened. And the king was so happy. But then the queen was coming back. And the king said, "Okay, faithful John, children, everybody hide in the closet." So they all went in the closet and hid. And when the queen came back, the king told her, he said, we have a chance to bring back faithful John to life, but we must kill our children. And the queen turned white, and she was horrified. But then she said, if we have a chance to bring back faithful John, we have to do it. We owe him. Owe means when you must give back something to somebody. And the king said, oh, I am so happy to hear you say that, because that shows that you agree with me. And the king said, good news. I gave up the lives of our children, but now we have everyone back, faithful John and our children. And the king opened the door, and everyone came out of the closet, faithful John and the two children together. And the queen was so happy, and the king was so happy. And the king and the queen and faithful John and the two children all lived together happily for the rest of their lives. The end.